Welcome, internet friends, to the 6th episode of the PixelPlay podcast, the podcast where two grown-ass men delve into the big news stories of gaming, as well as gush and rant about the past, present, and future games that they love. I'm one of your hosts, Kaylan, aka Ktastrophy, alongside my co-host, Adam, CSRadical. In this week, we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Direct that occurred last week, the announcement of PSVR 2, It Lives, and I am going to go deep and give you my impressions on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. That's going to all be coming up today, so stick around and join us. Adam, before we begin, how are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. I am one more work day away from vacation. Actually, by the time this podcast comes out, I'll be in the middle of my last day of work before a 4-day weekend, so hell yeah. I'm down. I'm ready to go.
Nice. What do you got planned for the 4-day weekend?
Doing fuck all.
Fantastic.
Which is honestly the best kind of vacation.
Hey, it's not like you can go anywhere right now, so why not?
I mean, I can go to the grocery store, I can go to the bank. I mean, I got so many options.
You know what? After being locked up for months, going to the bank sounds like a trip. Pack your bags.
I mean, I guess I can try to make something out of it.
You know, everything's a vacation if you want it to be. Yeah. So Adam, today did you get a chance to look at the Nintendo Direct that occurred last week?
In full, no. I skimmed the crap out of it because there was a lot of fluff in there that I'm like, okay, next.
You definitely dodged a bullet. I was watching it for the first little bit and I was like, oh my goodness, it just dragged on and on. So with that being said, I mean, let's go over some of the key announcements and you can I'll go through, you tell me what piques your interest, what your thoughts are, and we can kind of review and see and kind of circle back and see if this was a good resurgence of the Nintendo Direct, because it's been something like, what, a year and a half or so since the last official big Nintendo Direct, right?
It's been some time, that's for sure.
So yeah, so I thought we can kind of go through and look at some of the big announcements and kind of see, like, was this the event to bring Nintendo Direct back for? Okay, so I'm going to start off. Sorry?
Oh, I said yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so let's go over. So let's start with some of the bigger stuff. So one of the things that came out was announcement for Splatoon 3. This catch your eye at all? Are you a Splatoon guy?
I mean, I haven't played any of the Splatoon games apart from like maybe a couple matches when I was at a friend's place. So I'm pretty. This is going to be the majority of us talking about this, I should say, is that I haven't really been heavy into Nintendo since really the Wii. Because I mean, I owned a Wii U. I didn't get a lot for it because there wasn't a lot for it. So I kind of missed out on a bunch of stuff, especially now with not having a Switch. So Splatoon is kind of one of those things that's passed me by.
Yeah, Splatoon's never really kind of grabbed my attention. I'm not a big multiplayer shooter guy to begin with. But I mean, if I feel that Splatoon's not the one that I go to, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, it didn't really catch my eye. They announced a new character for the Super Smash Bros. That is Kira and Mithra. I guess 2 more Xenoblade characters. JRPG characters for the game.
It's not the 19th Fire Emblem character, so I'm sure some people were at least happy about that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of looked at it and it's just, I don't know. For me, it doesn't grab my attention. I'm, once again, not a big Xenoblade player, but I know there's been a lot of complaints about Xenoblade, or not Xenoblade, but Fire Emblem characters kind of populating the roster. Is Xenoblade as enough of a departure to kind of feel fresh? Or, like, when I was watching, I'm not familiar with the Xenoblade or the Fire Emblem games, so I couldn't tell you one from the other. But is it enough of a departure, do you think?
Xenoblade, honestly, like that character really, for most people, it's like, oh, it's sci-fi Fire Emblem because it's just another girl with a sword. So,
yeah.
The problem is too is I think, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of Nintendo fans, if they really stop and think about it for a moment, there's so much crossover now that anything normal for what would be in Smash is now like considered meh. Like, because it's not Sephiroth, it's not Snake, it's not Sonic, it's not like Joker from Persona. Like, so there's all these characters that have been brought in, and everybody's expecting the next like big one. Friggin' Steve from Minecraft is in this thing. So when they come out with a character from a JRPG series specific to Switch, people are like, oh, because they're all expecting they're expecting something crazy.
See, I don't know if they're expecting something crazy. I mean, enlighten me. Like, do you know, like, aside from Smash, do people really know Xenoblades a lot, or Fire Emblem, or are those more known now for being characters within Smash? Like, growing up as a kid, I never really heard much about Fire Emblem or Xenoblade or anything like that. So I don't really know much. But like for me, that's not what I think of when I think of like Nintendo mascots. And for the amount of representation that they have in there, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tricky subject because I think Smash has gotten to the point, especially because this game really put everybody in it, so all they can do is add. They kind of
Mhm.
put themselves in a position where they had to come out with something interesting, and as soon as they come out with a couple of things interesting, people are expecting that same level every time. So whenever they put something that honestly would have been like, if they released a new Smash game, Pyra would be the kind of character that they would put in as a default character to start with. This late into Smash Ultimate, it just kind of comes off as like this could have been done like ages ago. Like everybody's just looking for the next big one. They're looking for like the Doom guy or Master Chief or something crazy like that now.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't what we were planning on talking about, but like, where do you think Smash goes from here? I mean, I'm thinking of what the next iteration is going to be, and like they've pretty much got most people. Well, I'd say they got most of Nintendo characters covered. Like, how do you release another version of Smash without it feeling like a downgrading compared to Ultimate?
They'd have to change the formula somehow. It's the only way. Because if they just release it with slightly sharper graphics, like people are going to be like, well, what's the point? It would have to be something like drastic to be done, but it's Smash. You can't really do anything. So honestly, Smash just needs to go away for either they need to stick to this format or just needs to go away.
Yeah,
Ultimate's either going to last the entire time the Switch is around, or they're just going to have to not make a Smash game for like 5 years and just make people wait for it so that when it comes up again, they'll be accepting of missing stuff.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, I don't know how you like reintroduce it enough or switch it up enough to be fresh to the point that people don't care that there's fewer characters. You either, yeah, you have to double down and come out with an even bigger roster, but I imagine that's a pain in the ass to kind of balance everything and make it all work. So then, yeah, do you just kind of say, yep, here is Smash on the Switch. We're going to put it on hiatus for the rest of the console, maybe even early parts of the next console, and come back, or do you even just bring the game out as like a service? Like, hey, yep, here's Smash. Pay like it's a free to play kind of game. Pay for the characters or whatever. Do seasons. I don't know, but yeah, I kind of feel like they're getting themselves into a corner where there's really nowhere they can go from here.
Yeah, they're kind of running out of time on this. The shelf life for Smash characters, unless you're getting like big names, has kind of come to its end.
Yeah, yeah, because I can't think of anyone that they're drastically missing unless they start doing like costume characters and more and stuff. I don't know. JRPG stuff. Adam, your wheelhouse. Legend of Mana.
Meh.
Meh. Okay.
It's a remake.
Um, yeah. I was trying to see what else they got coming up here. Monster Samurai Warrior 5. Once again, it doesn't really do anything for me. They reminded us of their Monster Hunter Rise coming to the Switch.
Monster Hunter's good.
Sorry?
Monster Hunter's good.
Okay, yeah, we're good for that one. Once again, not a genre that caught my attention. I know some people really liked the last one on the PS4.
Oh yeah, World
It just
was fantastic. I didn't even get into Monster Hunter much, but when I played that game, it was amazing.
Okay. Yeah, I just never had the time commitment to go into that one. I've heard it's like you got to sink some time into it.
Yeah,
And
it can
that's
be a
just
little
not,
time consuming.
that's just not my thing. Super Mario content coming to Animal Crossing. Okay, like great. The one that kind of caught my attention is Mario Golf Speed Rush. Have you ever played the Mario Golf games?
Whenever I go to take my girlfriend to like an appointment or something and I have to sit in the office waiting, I will break out my 3DS and still play I think it's Mushroom Tour or something like that,
Yeah,
or World Tour or
yeah,
something like that. Yeah, no, it's not something I would play religiously, but anytime I open it up, I'm happy to go and play a couple of rounds. It's always a great game, and it made me sad that for so long they weren't really making them.
yeah. No, I completely agree. I've not played the Mario games. Once again, I'm not the biggest Nintendo fan within this team. Uh, But I played like Everybody's Golf, Hot Shot Golf, and that game is just addictive as hell. And I can only imagine, like, I look at some of the stuff that they have in the Mario version, like the speed rush style, like that just looks super cool.
That looks
So,
chaotic as shit, and I'm so down to try that.
oh, I'm so excited for that. Like, I'm kind of just tempted to just actually do it and like go to a real golf course and do that kind of crap. But
I feel like that
no,
might
I
cause
agree.
issues.
That's a thing what bridge will cross when we get there. I think this looks fantastic. I think this is, for me, probably the highlight of the show. Um, but even still, from that standpoint, like if this is the highlight of the show, like, do you agree with that idea that this is the highlight?
Probably not. I think Skyward Sword is going to probably hold that for most people, but I mean, in terms of
Yeah.
new games, probably, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good game. I'm really excited to try it with like the Switch controller, like the motion control sensors, and see how that works. Like that's something that really intrigues me. So, yeah, Mario Golf Speed Rush looks great. As the Star Wars fan on the here, Star Wars Hunter, I don't know. It was sounded good until I heard Zynga was making it, and then I was kind of like, nope, never mind. I'll see how that goes.
Well, they also didn't really show much to it, which just made me go, eh.
Yeah, what they did show, Zynga, was not enough for them to sell it to me, so I was kind of like, nah, I'm good. Uh, just gonna bring off a couple quick ones here. No More Heroes 3.
I haven't played since the original on Wii, so I mean, I'll take anything that's more like mature on a Nintendo console, so I won't complain.
Okay. I'm just gonna bring them off. Let me know if there's something you want to talk about here. Neon White,
I mean,
DC superhero.
if we're gonna go through the list, I can only tell you the one thing that we have left on here would be Project Triangle Strategy.
I was getting down to that one. So yeah, Project Triangle Strategy. What do you think of that?
I mean, they won't outright call it Final Fantasy Tactics, but I'm just gonna call it Final Fantasy Tactics because that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, it looks like very much so. And
it looks like Tactics and Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre had a baby.
yeah, yeah. So what's your hype level for this game? I know this is the one that I was gonna.
My hype level is it better not just be a Switch exclusive or I'm gonna be pissed. That's my hype level.
Because I guess Octopath Traveler was a Switch exclusive, was it not?
It did eventually move on. I think it got onto PC, so the release is a chance, and it's also Square that's releasing it, so there's a pretty decent chance it'll eventually be off there if it's not already.
Yeah, no, I think this is an awesome game. I think it's another good game for the Switch to have. Once again, not the JRPG fan here, but I know like my brother-in-law is huge into it, and he loved Octopath Traveler, so I'm sure he's super excited about it. So yeah, I think it's gonna be really exciting to hear more about that one when it comes out. Do you remember if they said when it comes out?
I think most of these things didn't really have much in the way of like dates. I think even this one, I think Project Triangle Strategy isn't even its title yet. So
No.
otherwise, I mean, I'm not gonna take away the fact that Japan makes some really stupid titles. So it's possible that's what they're keeping with, but I don't think that's what it's gonna be. And I think it's a lot of things where it's just they're kind of a lot of stuff that wasn't either ports or remakes or something like that, or indie games. Like most of this stuff wasn't really giving you a lot of information. It was more just being like, hey, look at what's coming soon on this console, and we're like, okay. And?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna kind of switch off to the last part about Zelda, but I think you're bringing on a good point. We'll circle back to Zelda. I think that was the issue with this direct, is that there was way too much in terms of filler games, or just games that were very niche, that people weren't necessarily going to all be excited for.
Yeah, like over half of what was being shown was either ports, remasters, DLC, or indie games that most people aren't really going to pay attention to. And it's not to take a shot at indie developers. It's more just a lot of people are watching these things not looking to see some random weird wacky like indie game that they probably won't touch until it's like 50% off.
Exactly. Yeah, I felt like Nintendo with this just kind of did a spray and pray. Like, let's just dump everything that we have going on and see what kind of resonates.
They could have either cut this in half or just really like quick fired some stuff.
Yeah, and I think like every major console producer, like Sony, Microsoft, they all do this, where they'll dump like, hey, here's a bunch of quick flash games. not Flash games, but here's like just a quick swath of a bunch of games that you probably haven't heard of, that you probably won't be interested in, but we're going to kind of give everyone their spotlight. And I feel like Nintendo just spent way too much time on that.
Yeah.
The one that you mentioned. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just about to say, like, yeah, it was like, there was a reason why I skimmed through it, because every time I'd watch something and be like, okay, I didn't need a 2-minute expose on this thing. Like, you could have done this in 15 seconds.
Yeah, and that's kind of something that I was thinking too, is like, this is a lot. Like, for us to sit here for an hour, and I mean, I watched it and there was only 2 or 3 things that came out of it. And I'm not a big Nintendo person, so I might not be the audience. But I don't really know who was the audience for this show. Like, it was pretty heavy JRPG focused. So like, okay, maybe it was like for Japan, maybe, I don't know, but like,
Well, given all the other indie stuff, like, I think honestly the only people that it was for are for people that only own Switch. Like, if you're a gamer of multiple platforms, like, this does nothing. If you're somebody who doesn't own a Switch, this certainly didn't bring you in either. So it feels like it was for people that only have the Switch and have no intention of going elsewhere. So they're just trying to get them here. See, look, we have stuff. We have things you can buy.
But the stuff they showed, like, I mean, yes, there was stuff, but is that really what, like, because the people who own the Switch are either, pretty young kids, like it's a family console for the family, like that's totally fine, or it's hardcore Nintendo fans, and I don't know if necessarily this is what hardcore Nintendo fans want.
Well, I mean, you said so yourself. They just spray and prayed. So
Yeah. I guess at this point, I thought we'd be seeing more and Nintendo coming out swinging. I mean, the Switch is almost 4 years old at this point, and like it's still a trickle. And most of the games that have come out have been ports of Wii U games. Like,
yeah, isn't it great that like all of this led up to them announcing a remake of a game that really, well, I mean, obviously needed a remake in Skyward Sword, but it only led up just for them to say, by the way, that game you really want to know about, we don't have information yet, but we'll let you know soon.
yeah, like, and that's the thing. Like, let's talk quickly about Zelda. And like,
It was a preview for a preview.
yeah, no, I think I was of the mindset where it's like, yeah, this is not what fans had hoped. I mean, with it being the 35th anniversary of Zelda, like now would have been the perfect time to be like, hey, here's what we've got going. And so my thought is either one, they don't have anything prepared. Two, it's not going to be ready anytime soon. Like, I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it. Like the fact that they're coming out with Skyward Sword. I mean, do you know a lot of people who are clamoring for a re-release of Skyward Sword?
I mean, if there definitely is, but that's not because people want to go and play Skyward Sword. It's more because it controlled so horribly on Wii U that people wanted just a chance to play that game again with proper controls so that they can see if the game was actually worth it. Because I've talked to a lot of people that played Skyward Sword and they said, man, this is probably the best Zelda game, but it controls like dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I have another show, and for like months and months and months, whenever we talked about Zelda. What's that?
Go ahead and plug it.
Okay, the VCR podcast. That's also on my YouTube channel at CSRadical, if anybody wants to check that out. But we've been talking forever. Like, we've been doing our show for over a year, and so many different times we talked about Skyward Sword, about how it desperately needed a Switch port. And now it's finally here, but they put it in the worst possible position because they basically put it when everybody wanted to hear anything else Zelda-related that wasn't a remake of something.
Yeah, so it's the question, like, did they send it out there to kind of die in the sense?
No, that's what Splatoon 3 was, because that was supposed to be their big main attraction, and that went off like a fart in church. And it's not to take a shot at Splatoon, because there's a lot of people that love that series, but like, if you're thinking the end of any presentation, like where it's like, oh, and one more thing, Splatoon 3 is not the one you think of.
No, and that's, yeah, I completely agree with you. And I don't know. I look at it, and once again, having not played Skyward Sword, I don't know, it didn't look super compelling to me. Like, I feel like sell me on it. Like, so Skyward Sword, like, I feel like the gimmick of it was that you can slash your sword and do the actions like Link, and you kind of lose that a little bit if you.
Well, the problem is that we're still like 20 years removed from that being really good controls. So.
Yeah. So I guess, like, is this really what we needed from Zelda, or like, do you think this is a mistake to remaster this one?
It's not a mistake to redo it. I think it's a great game that has a chance to now really show its true potential when it has a proper control set to it. But like we've said at the very beginning of this, people were expecting something bigger because Nintendo's been away for so long, and all they got was I mean, the two big things they got was a third game in a series that, I mean, people like, but it isn't
It's
a
a B tier.
blowaway like Splatoon is. And then they got a remake of a game that, is cool, but it's not anything new. Like, there's nothing in this entire like bore of a video package was like, holy shit, this is like the biggest thing we're gonna get this year.
Yeah, and that's what I think was a problem with this Direct is I think you resurrect the whole general Nintendo Direct hour-long thing, and it's for this. Like, I feel like that kind of took some of the excitement that they had. I think people were really clamoring, like, "Oh man, Nintendo Directs are back. What are we gonna get? What are we gonna get?" And it was kind of like, I don't know, like soggy bread in the sense it was just, ugh. Like,
I mean,
it wasn't
obviously in
anything
2 days, well, 2 days as of a recording, State of Play is going to be up again, and I'm used to State of Play having nothing in it, so I'm going in being like, all right, prepare to be disappointed, folks, because that's usually what happens, because they never usually show much.
See, I don't know. Once again, being the Sony pony that I am, I'm a little bit more excited for the State of Plays because, yeah, they have a history of being hit or miss, but I find that they know what they are. They keep them short.
Well, they also don't pretend that they're not like E3 level presentations. They're like, hey guys, like here's what's coming in the next couple months kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a bread trail kind of like, hey, here's a little bit, here's a little bit. But
it's almost like when you go into like an EB Games or a GameStop and you see like the parade of trailers that they're putting on the TV in there, and it's basically stuff coming out either that just came out or is coming out the next couple months just to get you hyped. Like that's what State of Play is usually meant to be. It's to get you ready for the next like season.
Yeah, but usually with the State of Plays, I at least walk away with something being like, holy crap, I'm so excited for this. I usually have something that I can go and bug my wife and be like, oh my God, they just announced this or they just showed that. And she pretends that she's interested. But
I mean, with the Direct, that was Project Triangle thing with, I'm already forgetting what the full name was because it's Final Fantasy Tactics. Stop it, Square. But yeah, like that one, I went, oh man, I can't wait to play that. I hope to God it's not just on Switch, but I can't wait to play it. Yeah, other than that, like it wasn't that. I mean, obviously we'll know next week when we do the next show and we talk about State of Play if State of Play was able to beat that. So
yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think the expectations were way too high. Well, with this being like the first State of Play in a while or Nintendo Direct in a while, and I just kind of feel like maybe this was not the one to resurrect this for.
I mean, either that or us as gamers just need to stop putting expectations way too high because we seem to have a bad tendency to do that too.
No, it's certainly not us. It's not our
We
fault.
don't overhype anything.
No, not
except
at
Cyberpunk
all.
2077, which deserved to be overhyped because it ended up being a pile of crap.
And checkmark, we got it in.
I did it.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts, final thoughts? Anything Nintendo should have done differently, or anything we want to add?
I mean, do you want the joke comment about, or do you want like the serious one? Because I don't have a serious one.
You know what? You surprised me. If you've only got the one in the chamber, just go with that one.
I can't remember who's making this game, but Nintendo, no offense, but you probably shouldn't have put the DC Superheroes Girls Teen Power game because that looked like an atrocious game.
Fair enough.
Oh boy. Yeah. I looked at that animation and was like, that's what it looks like when a bunch of like men in a business room think what teenage girls like. And I'm like, ooh, this is not going well when the MCU exists. Ooh.
Yeah, DC's
that was rough. But then again, it's DC, so I mean, DC hasn't really had a good track record anywhere recently.
They're right on track with where the expectations are.
I have to convince one of my co-hosts that, like, dude, just because it might look good in the trailers for Suicide Squad and Arkham Knights or whatever, the Gotham Knights, like, just because it looks good in the trailers, like, look, DC's got a bad track record right now. Just hang in there. You never know. It might be crap. Hang on.
Yeah, just show them the Avengers trailer and just be like, look.
Wait. Are we talking the Avengers game? Because I shouldn't show him that either.
No, that's what I'm saying. Show that as the example. Be like, hey, this looks promising too, and look how that landed.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess I'll do it twice. And Cyberpunk.
There we go. We're hitting our quota. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but do you want to give any like thoughts of what you're expecting from State of Play? I know we don't want to hype it up, but like, what do you think we're going to see real quick? Real hot take.
The only thing I would want is I want gameplay footage of Horizon 2. That's it. I don't expect too much, though. I'm expecting more or less like indie stuff. They might talk about some of the things that they're going to do with Play at Home because they already came out saying that Ratchet's going to be free pretty soon, and Funimation's going to be doing some work with them. So I suspect they'll be doing a little bit of that, but in terms of like pie in the sky stuff, I just want Horizon 2 gameplay, and I'll worry about everything else.
Yeah, I'd like to see, even if it's not like gameplay, I just want to see a story trailer. I'm curious to see where they're gonna go with it. Kind of get a sense. Gameplay would be awesome. If I'm shooting for like hopes and dreams in the future, I'm either hoping for probably like seeing a Ghost or God of War Ragnarok trailer. That would be sick.
I'm doubting that now just because I'm hearing rumors that they're already getting ready to push it back to 2022, so we might be waiting on that one.
Oh no, I'm not expecting anything, but even if we could just get like a story trailer or something like that, just
Yeah.
quick snippet, that would be awesome. We'll have to find out in 2 days.
That might be an E3 save, though.
It could be an E3 save. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're definitely going to get something related to Horizon, and then probably like some play at home stuff. But yeah, Sony, if you're listening, you've got time. Switch it around.
You know what? The big one, State of Play, February 25th. We're finally going to find out that there's going to be black PS5s. That'll be the big announcement.
That's why there's none available right now. They're all just spray painting in the back of the parking lot. Speaking of PlayStation, Sony announced actually today that they're officially working on a PSVR 2 headset. Let me just pull this up. So this comes actually right out of the PlayStation blog, introducing the next generation of VR on PlayStation. Blah, blah, blah. Today, I'm pleased to share our next generation VR system will be coming to PlayStation 5, enabling ultimate entertainment experience with dynamic leaps in performance and interactivity. We're continuing to innovate on our VR system that has fans continue to enjoy the experience. They're taking what they've learned from the PSVR on PlayStation 4. Big things that are coming out of it. One of the innovations is there's going to be a new VR controller, which will incorporate some of the key features found on the DualSense wireless controller, along with a focus on greater ergonomics. That's just one of the examples of the future-proof technology we're developing to match our vision for a whole new generation of VR games and experiences. It also mentions that it's going down into just having a single cable for connectivity, so hopefully you don't have to go through some sort of box. Adam, quickly, what is your thoughts on this?
I have wanted to own a PlayStation VR set for a while, and every time I think about it, I go, do I really want to pay the price of a console just to play like 2 games in VR? And every time, part of my brain goes, yes, because that sounds amazing to play Borderlands 2 in VR. But then it has to stop me and go, that's still a lot of money for like 2 games. But every time that I hear about what this new VR is going to be like, especially when there's possibility of haptic feedback within either the controller or even the headset itself, and then other things like, better FOV, which is a big deal that might help people reduce motion sickness. Every time that I hear about these things, my brain keeps going, man, like, some of these games could look so cool in VR. Like, I would love to play, as much as I don't care much about Call of Duty anymore, being able to play those kind of games in VR would be amazing. I still think we're far removed from that ever being a possibility, because like I said, I think motion sickness is going to be a really tough hurdle to overcome with this stuff. But everything I read in this story, it gets me hyped at least to see like what the potential is. In the crazy scenario that somehow, that cash for life lottery ticket comes through and I can finally start spending money copiously for no reason. But otherwise, it's me living vicariously through other people that get to have those.
Yeah, so for me, I did have a PSVR headset. I got one of the first ones, and it's awesome. It's a really cool piece of technology, but I very rarely play it. Like it's really cool to have. I'm really glad I have it, but to be honest, most of the time when I'm, getting home and turning on a PlayStation, like I'm not looking. It's one of those I turn it on. It's like, oh, okay, I gotta go grab the headset. Got to move a chair to the middle of the living room because I need to be able to like have space. And then I'm taking up the whole living room, so I have to make sure that nobody else is home and I've got the space to myself. Hooking it up and then I'm playing it, and it's great. It's a lot of fun, but I mean, it's a hassle to get set up. Make sure all the move controllers are turned on. Oh crap, this one's dead. Okay, well I have to wait. But once I'm in, I'm loving it. Like I've played like the job simulator games. I've played Super Hot. Oh, Beat Saber. Like they're a blast once I'm in there, but it's just such a hassle to get in. And by the time I'm done, I'm not playing for as long as I usually do when I'm just playing on a normal PlayStation. And it's hard because it does take up all that space in the living room, and you have to kind of have the cameras in a really good position. So I find it cumbersome, and I hope that with VR2 that's something that they alleviate so that it doesn't take up as much space. Like I understand they're having one cable, it's much easier to set up, but it's still tied to a cable. And so my console is to the side of the room while my TV is in one part. So like once again, it's gonna be weird and cumbersome, and I don't know. That
Yeah,
being
you wish
said,
there'd be a way to like wirelessly have it, or even like have the ability to be able to like it should be able to almost be Bluetooth, but I wonder if that because of the lag of the input, it probably wouldn't work very well. So I think
yeah,
it just comes to that point where we're still at a limitation of the hardware, where it's like a lot of things. Like same with motion controls when it started out with the Wii and you had the Kinect. It's early tech. Like we're still nowhere near perfecting it. So it's kind of the problem with all of these things where it's cool on paper and it is still pretty cool in bits, but it's not going to be like game changing to the point that like you only use it. It's still a ways away. Not to mention that the library just isn't big enough to make it worth playing all the time. You're obviously not going to be using your VR all the time when games like Spider-Man and Ghost of Tsushima and all these other games don't use it. So it's kind of that tough thing where it's you want it and you know that you're going to get your money's worth of it with the stuff that you do get, but you also kind of sits on the shelf long enough that you kind of stare at it and be like, man, I wish I could use you more.
yeah. And that's the thing. I think you kind of nailed it. Is that the games are great. Like I said, Beat Saber is one of my favorite games I've played, but they always are somewhat. And I'm not saying this pejoratively, but they're gimmicky. Um, they never feel like a true, AAA kind of experience. They always kind of feel like, oh, this is like it almost always feels like it kind of reminds me of like the arcade when you used to go to the arcade as a kid. Like not so much in the early days, but once like the PS1 kind of came out, you're like, okay, like I've got good games at home, and then the arcade just kind of felt like, okay, it's a time killer. It's a bit of a gimmick, if you know what I mean. Like, am I explaining that well?
It really depends. Like with the arcade stuff, I mean, now it's really like a few and far between kind of thing. So it's not the same. Like we both live in an area where there used to be a massive arcade called the Palladium that recently shut down.
Hmm.
And even when I was still having like PS2 era, I could find many things in that building that I would love to do. But it's not something you go to frequently. Not more just because of the cost, because you would never be able to afford to go there daily. But it's still worth something. And I think with VR, it's the same way. Like it's still worth something. It's just not going to be a consistency, and it's still not at that point where, like I said, because most of the major games aren't coming out for it. You said so yourself. There really aren't like AAA games. I think the closest thing to it would probably be Blood and Truth, and
Yeah,
or other than that, but like the VR releases of like Borderlands 2, Skyrim, etc. But even then, like it's basically just a really like it's just a port of a game that already existed. But the true thing is, and I've seen people talking about this on like Reddit and social media. It would be a really big get for PlayStation if they really wanted this to be taken seriously, this new headset, if they got Valve on their side and got Half-Life Alyx on for that thing.
yeah. I think one of the limitations for the VR headset or the first iteration was the Move controller. I mean, they stayed with these Move controllers from the PS3 era that weren't, at least as far as I can imagine, designed with the VR in mind. And so they were limited in that sense. So like I was often playing games, and the games that I think that worked best were things like Job Simulator and Beat Saber, where you were just sitting there in one place, just wiggling your hands in a sense. And so I think what'll kind of make or break the second VR system is what those new controllers look like. Like if you have a controller where it's, let's say, an analog stick for your thumb and then like two buttons, almost like what the nunchuck used to look like for the Nintendo Wii. Like that would almost open it up that you could start playing AAA games if you had that analog stick to kind of move around in the world and you had the trigger buttons at your fingertips. Like I think that would be what would be a game changer and would allow for more what we think of as AAA games in VR.
Yeah, I mean, and we even see things similar to like what the Vive sticks have, or like the Oculus. So we know we know the variations of it, what they can look like. So I think the key thing is we all probably agree on this, but like the key to this thing really succeeding is if they can make first person shooters viable on that, because that's the big thing that everybody wants to do in VR. And it's not like I'm saying that that's what their focus should be, but I mean, like, that's going to be really what gets VR's attention for people. It's going to be those Call of Duty Battlefield level games, because if you can get controllers with like half decent triggers that make you feel really immersive, as soon as you get that down, then you can start making all the really fun stuff, because now you've got a pretty good base to run with.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some potential for it in the future. I mean, we're talking a lot. We've been bragging on the PSVR 1 a little bit. Let me ask you though, like, was PSVR 1, as I'm been calling it, was it a success or do you think it was a failure?
I'd have to look at the numbers, but I mean, clearly it must have been enough of success to them for them to want to make a second shot of it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've from my understanding, I think their initial plan was they were hoping to sell like a couple million of them, and I think they definitely hit that. I'm of the mindset, for all the complaining and all the whining I've did, I think PSVR was a success in terms of what it was set out to accomplish. It was Sony's dipping its toes into VR for the first time, kind of seeing what fit, what didn't, and I think the fact that we're seeing a second one, it did succeed. Proof of concept showed that it could be happen, showed that there was some interest from the consumer side. So I think PSVR one, for all its shortcomings and stuff, was a success.
I just did a quick look at it. It seems that the most recent study I can find comes finishing January 20th or January 2020,
Okay.
and they hit about 5 million units.
Yeah, and I think their original target, I would think they were hoping to hit like 1 million in the first year or something like that.
It looks like they came pretty close to that. Like as I look again, it was because when did it come out initially? It would have been. Oh,
I think it was
God, I'm trying to remember.
2017.
It was October of 2016.
Ah,
So
that's close.
if we get to that time, oh crap! I lost access. Apparently, I click it more than once and I lose access to it. Okay, well,
No worries.
I think around like that year point they were pretty close to a million. So I think they definitely did what they were hoping for, and they probably thought it was enough of a base that it would be worth at least taking a second look into and taking a good chunk at it now, especially with the haptic feedback, because now you can make it even more immersive. That can really give potential to people getting really into these things.
For sure. Like I said, I think it's going to really depend on what those new VR controllers look like and what they enable. That will be, I think, a game changer.
I mean, it's going to be three things. It's going to be the actual quality of the hardware, whether that's motion sickness, the controllers, whatever, the game library, and then the biggest one is going to be the price. That's going to be the biggest factor for so many people. So
Yeah, I think especially like one of the things that the PSVR one had is that it already had the install base of the PS4. I imagine. What do you think? We're going to see this next year or 2023?
earliest 2022, and I think that might even be pushing it. It might be like pretty close to the end of 2022 at the earliest, I would imagine.
Yeah, I could see this being sort of like a Christmas 2022 kind of thing. So we're probably a year and a half out, and so hopefully, like the install numbers will be better for PlayStation. But I don't know. Like I think that the VR one already had it that, hey, you've already got this sitting in your house. Why don't you check out the VR unit? Whereas this one, it's like, hey, you just bought this $500 to $800 system. You want to spend another 200-300 bucks on this headset for it? And I think that's gonna be a harder sale.
Well, we'll see. I mean, obviously, we're still not running out of people wanting to buy a PS5, so you never know.
It's true. So Adam, talking about VR, one last thing I wanted to ask: if you could pick one franchise to put into VR, and I'm not saying like a quality, like if they said to you, Adam, we promise that this game will be amazing on VR, you can enjoy it. What is the game that you want on a VR system?
Because here's the problem: are we actually like talking like realistically would work right now? Are we talking like fantasy, like somehow it's going to work no matter what it is?
Let me rephrase. What game franchise do you think would lend itself well to VR if you could assure that it would like be a good port, like it would transition well, like a game that people would want to play VR in? I'll throw out mine for example, just to give you a head start, so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. For me, I think it's Fallout. Fallout would look fantastic if you could get a good Fallout where you could actually move around and explore. And I think that's what you need for a good VR game, is a game where you can go out and explore. And imagine just walking the ruins of a city and you can like look around, look down, pick things up. Like I think Fallout would lend itself so well to the VR experience. And with the VAT system, like VATS would be a good way to sorry to interrupt. VATS would be an awesome thing that would lend well as well to VR, because you can then pause the game. Then it becomes like a gallery shooter. You can kind of have slow time, bullet time shooting. So I don't know. For me, I'd love to, if there was like the next iteration of Fallout was in VR and you could actually do proper movement, I could see myself going for that.
I'm going to give you two answers. I'm going to give you the one that I think should be done because I think it's going to work really well. And then I'm going to give you the one that, like, if they could somehow find a way to make it work, it would be incredible. The one that would make 100% sense is that whenever Gran Turismo 7 comes out, that it is VR possible. Because just being able to drive in a car and being able to see that in the graphic style that we obviously can see out of the PS5 would be incredible. Just being able to see the sights of like the Nürburgring or whatever tracks that they come up with, and then obviously being able to feel like you're inside like this really souped up like Ferrari or something like that. I think a lot of people would be like super into that idea. The crazy one, which is impossible because there's no way they can make that work in first person.
Well,
but if you could find a way,
they're not done with the R&D, so you could be pitching what the future of VR looks like. So make it a good pitch.
I don't know. I don't think they could make a Final Fantasy 14 level MMORPG in VR without it being pretty sketch.
So you're suggesting almost something like the Oasis from Ready Player One.
Look, I'm just asking for like real Sword Art on. Well, actually, Sword Art Online's kind of crap. I'm gonna go Log Horizon for anime nerds who know what we're talking about. But yeah, if we're getting full on like MMORPG in VR, yeah, no, like that would be the big thing that would get people's attention because people already desperately want to get out of this world because 2020 and 2021 have not been the nicest years to people. I think any excuse for them to get away from it just a little bit longer would be pretty well appreciated.
Yeah, I think I wasn't thinking of like an MMO aspect, but I think you're right. Like an MMO would lend itself very well into VR, especially right now. So. All right. Any closing thoughts? Anything to wrap up for PSVR?
No, I think I got the point across. Like it's just going to come down to, we don't know when it's going to come out, but they've got enough time to really get a sense of how people's buying habits are going. We'll probably by then at least have a pretty good grasp on supply and demand with PlayStations again, so that's going to be at least a decent available like consumer base for them to market this thing to. It really is just going to come down to like, is it going to be a big enough upgrade from the original headset that it's worth getting, and then is the library going to be kept together? Because I mean, I did say price, but let's be honest, like the people who are going to buy it are probably going to buy it regardless of what price, without it being like $1,000 level price. They're not going to make it more expensive than the console. That would be kind of silly. So it's really just going to come down to, is it going to be worth it game wise? Because if they say, oh, we're going to have a couple of games, and then 6 months down the road there's like nothing, then what's the point of spending $400 or $500 on this thing? So I think that's going to be the key. It's the same with any other console. Like I said that about the Switch too. It's going to be the library that keeps people alive on that thing, and I think that's what it's going to be with VR too, whatever they end up calling it.
All right, so I think that about covers up PSVR. Adam, anything else you want to bring up before I dig into Assassin's Creed Valhalla?
No, let's get into selling. We got some shit to push.
All right.
Although I think Assassin's Creed is not exactly going to be something that people got to be sold on. It's not me with my indie game and JRPG that most people hadn't heard of. So you might be more just like gushing on this one.
Yeah, no. Well, we'll see. I mean, I think this game really could use some push. So I don't. Here's my go at it. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we do not get our games for free, and we are both working men, so we both don't have the time to get you reviews on time. So, we're going to give you another iteration of untimely reviews. This time, I'm going to be covering Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I finished it over the weekend. Adam, what a game! Good and bad. Now, the first thing is, if you are thinking of getting into Valhalla, drop everything. If you have a significant other, leave them. If you have other hobbies, drop them. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is not a game. It is a lifestyle. You choose this lifestyle and you give up everything else. It's like being in the mob. You're in 100%. So I was thinking about this, where I want to go with it. I would equate Assassin's Creed Valhalla as a steak dinner. Really good. The steak is cooked perfectly. The vegetables complement it well. It's all fantastic. There's just too much of it. So I enjoy, a good 8-ounce, 12-ounce steak. It's delicious. I don't want to eat a 72-ounce steak. After the 12 ounces, after the 16 ounces, maybe, I'm done. I'm not enjoying it myself. I'm now just going through the motions just to get it done. And that's how I felt with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So I think I was something like 80 hours into game time to play it. And the last 20, maybe 30 hours were just a slog. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why don't you just quit, Kaylan? once again, you do not quit Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This is a commitment. This is your life now. So I've been playing it since it came out, shortly after it came out, probably December. I quickly played Miles Morales, and this is all I've been playing for like the last 2 or 3 months. And so, basic crux of the game, you guys probably all know about it. You are playing as Eivor, and you are a Viking during the invasion slash conquest of England. And essentially, you leave Norway and you come to England to make yourself a settlement and a town for your own. And it's a great idea. It's a great concept. So you start the game by playing, like you have a little settlement and you have no allies, and your goal is to go and build these alliances. And they are awesome. These are all little short missions, typically 4 to 5 missions, so little story. I'll give you like a synopsis of one. So I'll spoil one of them. You go to this group of Vikings, another Viking settlement that's there. They're all in disarray. They're all torn apart. They're missing. They're not where they're supposed to be, and they've just been had a sneak attack and they've been routed out by the Saxons. And so you end up going by recruiting everyone, taking the city back, and you end up finding out that one of the 3 advisors to the Jarl, or to like the leader of the group, betrayed them. So you now have to go around and figure out who betrayed them and why. And it has like this whole detective feel, and it's really cool. And I really enjoyed that. Or there's another one where you've got a king, or like a boy who's destined to be king, and you help him out. So you've got these great stories and beats and characters. But the problem is, like, you do the first, I'd say, 6 or 7 of these, activities, like these little alliance missions, and they're great. But I think there's something like 14 of them. And after a while, you're just like, I don't know or care who these people are. Like, I was playing the game and it has a good story arc and it seems like it's wrapping up, and then you finish it, and then there's still like another 20% of the game left to go. Um, and the problem is that, like, it's such a long game that I was playing it, and at the end, there's like this moment where all your allies come together towards the end to help you, do the final mission, and they're like trying to like talk to your allies, and they're all having these moments, and I'm like, who the hell are you? I met you like 50 hours ago. I don't remember who you are. This means nothing to me. And so I felt the game needed a bit of editing, in the sense that the story is way too big and what the scope is. Um, Now that's just the length of the game. I feel the game is too long. It's great. The gameplay is awesome. It just overstays its welcome. I think the other problem is too is that there are too many storylines that are going on this. This is an awesome Viking game. You're a Viking, you go on raids, you're raiding, you're pillaging, you're doing all sorts of stuff that Vikings do. But at the same time, it's also an Assassin's Creed game, and it's actually a really good game from the standpoint of being an assassin. Like, you can drop in and do silent assassinations and one hit strikes like you used to. That was an issue I had with the original Assassin's Creed games, is that they kind of moved away from that stealth assassin, and this has now brought it back. The problem is that the two stories and the two identities don't mesh well together. Like, I'm a badass Viking. I want to go 2 axes blazing and just cut everyone to pieces. But at the same time, Assassin's Creed, and I want to stealthily go and stab people in the neck. And so I find like having those two there, like, I think Assassin's Creed needs to kind of figure out, like, is it going to be an Assassin's Creed game and the focus is on stealth? Or are they just going for the historical adventures where you're a Greek warrior, or you're a Viking, or you're whatever? And I think there's a room for both of these. Like, I don't think there needs to be one or the other. But what ended up happening is that, if you like, I ended up just straight, golden path in the main game. And by the end, I was playing it and I finished the game, and I look and I've barely completed the Assassin's Creed side, where you have to go and get all these targets. And I'm so burnt out that I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So, I feel like having the two stories kind of going side to side doesn't really blend well. And I think that's part of the issue of it just being too big and too long of a game, that it kind of, by the time they wanted me to do this extra bonus stuff, I didn't care anymore. So I feel like they kind of needed to focus up there. Um, and the last thing is like the ending. Like, I guess I got to the ending. Like I said with Assassin's Creed, it is a lifestyle. It's like the mob. You do not finish the game. You just decide to leave. Um, because I was playing it and it got to what felt like a conclusion, but there was still one more territory that I had to go and beat. And I'm like, okay, so that's probably the ending. And I go and do it, beat it. It doesn't really conclude anything. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I have to go and do all these assassinations. And I'm not going to do that. So it kind of just ends, like, in the sense of, okay, I guess I can just go do side mission content now. And for me, it did not resonate super well. That being one other thing I just want to give a shout out to is the soundtrack to this game is absolutely phenomenal. Um, just the ambient music, like the music that you have when you're on your boat, like it's really good. Like I really liked it. I sometimes would just sit there and just listen to the soundtrack because it was really good. That being said, there are bugs as you would typically expect with a Ubisoft game. Nothing game breaking. The thing that really kind of stuck out with me was voice actor, like the voice syncing wasn't really good. So sometimes people would just be like not moving their mouths while they talk to each other. You'd still hear them, but it's just they're just looking at you with like mouths like completely like not moving. So it's like everyone's just communicating telepathically to one another. So that was basically for me like the big takeaways from that. So overall, I think it's a good game. It was a fun Viking game. It was a good Assassin's Creed game. It was too long combined, and I felt like it needed a little bit of like it needs to be a little bit tighter. Any thoughts? Questions? Did I kind of cover it? I know I've been talking for a while.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm waiting. Is he good? Is he good? All right. I get the sense of the same thing that I hear when I played Odyssey. Honestly, a lot of open world games seem to fall into a similar trap in that you enjoy the first 10 to 20 hours and then you start to see the repetition, and then some things keep hanging in there with you, others don't. And then a lot of times these open world games, they don't tend to end that great, which apparently you got the sense of from Valhalla. I remember when I played Odyssey, like, did I get a resolution? I mean, I guess, but I didn't go being like, yeah, that was amazing. Like, by the end of it, I'm like, oh, there's more. Not to mention that Odyssey is DLC, which it kind of leads you into buying because you want to get more of the story, which I didn't because I take stands against that crap. So it sounds to me like, yeah, it's pretty much an open world game in every bit of the letter, because it seems like it's a pretty badass place to be in, but it also has a lot of repetition and a lot of flaws that eventually start to pour out the longer and longer you explore it. I mean, that's the sense that I get it. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think that like one of the problems that they did is they were like, oh, we're gonna get rid of side quests, and I felt like they never did. They just kind of put those side quests into main quests. Like I got to the point where it's like, okay, go to this place. I get there and they're like, okay, well, thanks for coming, but you actually need to go here, and it's another like 1,000 feet or meters or whatever in the game, and I'm just like, don't waste my time. Like I felt like there was a lot of that. Um, Having not played Cyberpunk, one of the things I heard, and you can kind of let me know if I'm on the right track, but I feel like Cyberpunk did a good job in that having this massive open world that if you want to stay here for a long time, there are lots of adventures, lots of side quests to do. But if you just want to get in, get out, have a tight story, the gameplay story is only like 30 hours or something like that, is what I've heard. Like, I think that's what Assassin's Creed almost needed to do. Like, hey, if you want a Viking adventure, here's a 20-hour campaign on being a Viking. Go like protect a settlement and build a settlement, make alliances, whatever. You want to be an assassin? Here's a 15 to 20-hour campaign. Go be an assassin, and there's a tight story for that. But I think to have them both tied and be so long, that I think was the issue. So I think if they had made it so there was more like a smaller campaign in a bigger world, I think that would have been an issue. But the fact that you had to go through so much to get there was probably a problem.
It's the inevitable problem with a lot of open world games, in that you make the world so big because people want the big world. The problem is it's impossible to fill it.
Yeah.
And that means there's going to be a lot of repeated stuff. I mean, I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima right now, and there seems like a weird amount of haiku spots on the map, which makes no sense. Apparently, there's only a select few of fox trees, so it's that kind of stuff where it's immersion breaking, and you also know that you're dealing with padding of the game. You know that this is being put in there so that it takes a couple more hours into it, because we as consumers have kind of decided that hours is the measure that we use for worth. And that's true to some extent in some games, but it's really dependent on what that game is. Because there are amazing games that are less than 10 hours, but there are also amazing games that are more than that are almost in the hundreds. But it's really dependent on the kind of game that you're playing. And if the kind of game that you're designing requires half of your game to be repetition, you might just want to shorten the game down at that point.
Yeah, that's like because I've heard some people say like, oh well, they just pad this out so that they can sell their XP boosters. I don't think that was the case because I never once felt underpowered. Even the last level, they were like, you need to have a strength level of 340 or whatever, and I was like, okay. And I've been playing the game on hard the whole time, and then I got to this point, and I was like 60 levels away, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do it for this one mission. So I just brought down the difficulty, and it was pretty easy for me to get through it. Um, I just think that yeah, they're just trying to pad the game in order to feel that people are getting their value. But I think a lot of people are starting to feel this burnout from Assassin's Creed and them being such time commitments, especially for what is becoming a very convoluted story. Like I did not play the Odyssey DLC, and I felt somewhat lost. I had no clue. I had to go on some Wikipedia pages, and for me, it's getting way too big, and I feel like they need to bring it back and make it tighter. Um, and I
In
think
a way, it almost feels like they would benefit from literally just not. I mean, I know the Animus is a thing, and we all know the Animus is a thing now. So they can just make a game where you're just playing as an historical figure and just having their story and not worrying about the Animus.
yeah,
I think if you want to do it so badly, you can do it in like an end screen where you wake up from it and do like a quick thing. But the fact that like they try to use both and whatever else, it's already complicated enough in the open world with all the stuff that they're trying to make you follow. The second you bring in a second story into it, it just gets weird.
well, that's the thing. I feel like there was a lot of like filler in the sense of there's talk of like the alien previous race, there's talk about what's going on with current Templar thing, and then there's the Viking aspect. And I just kind of like, you have a lot of threads going on now, and it's getting very convoluted. You're not making the DLC stories, like, even just playing the main games, I still don't know what's going on anymore because I didn't play the Odyssey DLC. Even though
And
Odyssey was
not to
already
mention too, like if you're completely new to the series and you just saw a Viking game and you're like, that's so freaking cool, I want to try this. You're sitting there being like, I just want to play as a Viking. What are you guys doing? Stop.
exactly. I'd love to see Assassin's Creed just kind of keep the whole assassin Templar thing. Just make it simple. Like just make it, hey, there's this ongoing shadow war that's always been going on between this group that wants to control everything and bring order to a chaotic universe at the cost of freedom, and there's this group that is more for liberty at the cost of disorder and chaos. Don't have this end of the world crap. Don't have this futuristic historical pre-society thing. Like just keep it, make it this endless struggle. Just make it like a Saturday morning cartoon where it's these two people, different times in the world, that they're just having these battles that are kind of endless. And I think
Yeah.
that would be much more accessible for people to get in and get out. So, like I said, I like the game. I liked Assassin's Creed. I'd like the next one to be smaller, shorter, and a little bit tighter. But being a video game nerd and a history nerd, these are just a weak spot for me. So I will reluctantly probably play the next game. But for now, I'm done with
If
Assassin's
you were to
Creed.
give it a score though, what would you give it?
I'd probably give it like a 7, give or take. It wasn't a bad game. Like I enjoyed myself I enjoyed myself at times. A lot of the time I enjoyed myself. It was the last little bit that felt like a slog. But I mean, the combat's good. The exploration's fun. Like it's really a gorgeous game. So yeah, I'd probably give it a 7. Like a very like I wouldn't give it more than a 7. Probably like between a 6.5 and a 7.
So
So
it's above average. It's the kind of thing that you're like, it certainly sounds like the kind of games that I think unless you're stupid into Assassin's Creed, like you're way deep into that, it's probably a game that you'd never buy full price anymore, and it's something you probably wait for at least like that 33% off plus kind of sale price.
yeah, especially with Ubisoft, with like their prices go down quick. Like, yeah, this is one. If you get it for $30, get it as much as you can out of it, and then drop it. Like that's fine. Um, I don't feel compelled anymore to like the whole Assassin's Creed saga. Like I said, I'm digesting them now as just one-off stories and adventures between these two warring parties. I don't really care about the long-term story aspect. No, like I said, it's a good game, but I think there are games that do it better. Right now, I've now moved on and I am playing Bugsnax, and that's an adorable game.
Nice.
I am absolutely loving it. It is so much fun. It's exactly the palate cleanser I need.
Oh, we'll probably hear about that next week then.
Probably not. If not next week, probably the week after. But yeah, it's not.
I was gonna say it's only like 8 to 10 hours, so it depends on how much time you sink into it.
Oh, I'm going deep down the rabbit hole. I'm catching all the Bugsnax. Yeah.
Okay, what's your favorite one already? I gotta ask. What's your favorite one so far?
Which one do I like? I like Financial is pretty cute. It's pretty clever. The popcorn, how you like catch the popcorn on fire so it actually turns into popcorn. And then like the riblet ones, like the ones that like it's like a centipede or whatever.
Yeah.
But it like is like a rack of ribs. That's pretty cool.
I'm still a bunger guy.
Yeah, the bungers are pretty funny. Just walking around bunger. So. Yeah,
I said this way back when I was playing the game. I'm like, man, I love the fact that somebody clearly got paid to do this. All you do is say in a recording booth and just go bunger.
Yeah,
that's a great job.
Yeah, no, I think it's really well done. It's a fun little charming game, and I think they were smart in putting that as a PlayStation Plus game to start the console.
And apparently they made more money off of that game than they did with their previous one, I think, in Octodad.
Yeah. Well, I think, once again, Octodad would have been a good PlayStation Plus game. It's just one of those... I think Bugsnax would probably have been a better game to sell versus Octodad, but Octodad was, like, the gimmick was of it's funny to have these wacky controllers, but, like, it's not something I want to drop my cash for. And same with Bugsnax. Bugsnax has, like, a weird premise that it's like, okay... I eat these fruit. I'm a gopher kind of looking thing. If I eat this fruit, like my hand turns into a fruit, because that raises a whole bunch of questions. Like, is this permanent? Does the fruit like deteriorate? Like, strawberries don't last very long, Adam. What happens to this person's hand? Is it going to rot off of them? Like, I'm concerned about this.
You need to stop asking questions, man.
I seem like I'm the only one that's concerned about these people's longevity of their limbs.
Don't make me get the Bugsnax Illuminati to take care of you.
No, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'll have a report for you back probably in the next week or two. Adam, that's it for me. Is there anything on your radar? Anything you want to bring up? Hot takes you want to share? Anything like that?
Oh shit, we trying to hot take again? I thought the Hot Pocket stuff was done for a while.
You do not have to if you don't have anything ready to go.
No, I got my 2 shots at Cyberpunk in already in this show. I think I've got my my quota done for the week.
Okay, we'll leave that one for another week then. Yeah, we could actually make it a tradition, because it was our last episode. It was the 5th episode, so we'll make it every 5th episode will come with a hot take.
Oh,
so
damn.
On episode 10, you can give you the hot take. How does that sound?
Oh wait, we were doing this weekly. Shit, can I come up with one really quickly? You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna come up with something real fast.
I don't want it to be forced. You can't force a hot take.
Oh no, I have a couple here.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna go with a joke one first. There can be games out there that do things you don't like. Oh.
Got an example for me?
Anything.
Fantastic.
Every time a game comes out, they're like, I don't like that this is a shooter. It's like, too bad.
Yeah. Well, that's just the internet. We've established this. People like to complain on these.
I'll give you probably the one hot take that I can do in a quicker time, because some of these would be a much longer conversation.
Sure.
I hate the line, the most realistic blank ever. I think it is the worst concept you can have for a video game.
In the sense of...
Unless your game is a first-person walking simulator kind of game, realism does not always equal fun.
No, I agree with that. I think most of the time we are trying to escape. Now, what would you make of the argument, like a racing sim or something like that? Like or like flight simulator. Like, I think in that situation, what you're striving for is that realism.
Yes and no, because I mean, if it was like a real car, you would crash immediately every time. Well, let's be honest, we'd all crash horribly. It's the same reason why if we were playing a shooter, if it was completely real with recoil and shit, we'd never hit anything. There's a point, and whenever I see games being like, it's the most real it can be, and I really lean to sports games as the big part of it, realism, generally speaking, means boring, and it means clunky, and it means losing immersion, because realism is not just visual. Realism also would have to do with controls, would deal with other things like that. So when I see shooters that are like, oh, it's the most realistic shooter out there, my brain goes, oh, so it's going to be really, really boring and hard to play.
Yeah.
When I see a driving game that says that, I go, okay, that's probably makes more sense. You would also just rather get the steering wheel attachment too, which could also work. But like, I find that aside from the graphical fidelity of a game, the second realism gets brought into an equation, it suddenly starts equating more to, we're trying to make this game too real to the point that we're going to be now dumbing down our controls, or we're going to be making it so complicated with a million different inputs that it's just going to be way too much. So it's either going to be like very one dimensional, or it's going to be too overly complicated.
Well, pretty good hot take. We'll leave it at that for this episode.
Yeah, much of a hot take. We're agreeing pretty much on the premise. That sucks. Well,
well, I like I said, I'm of a mindset, like, I think, there's some games where the realism is the aspect, and like I said, I think Flight Simulator would be like one of those experiences. But yeah, I think for the most part, that's just used typically as a buzzword that doesn't actually mean much. Cool. Well, Adam, thank you for joining me again for another episode of the Pixel Play podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, share it with your friends. Let them know that this is a thing and that we're making some quality content here. As our podcast posts every Wednesday, so you can join us next week on Wednesday to get another episode of the Pixel Play podcast. Once again, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for listening, and thank you for your support. Have a good night.